The TRS of Jacob. The history of the Israelites begins with Jacob. According to the folk etymology, this is where the Israelites first started. The ones with Abraham were the Hebrews, or the Awer, A-W-E-R. Those who made a journey, those who made a passage, i.e. from Ur through the Tehran to or Haran to the land of the Canaanites. The Canaanites, yeah. The history of the Israelites begins with Jacob. So how can you merge Hebrew Israelites? Saying that they're Hebrew Israelites. It just doesn't gel. Completely different people, and these Israelites came later. They may have merged and became the Israelites, but how can you call two separate clans the Hebrew Israelites? Or either the Hebrews or the Israelites. The history of the Israelites begins with Jacob, according to the folk etymology found in Genesis 25:26. The name Yaakov is derived from Agiv, heel, as Jacob was born grasping the heel of his twin brother Esau. The historical origin of the name is uncertain, although similar names have been recorded. Yaqub Har is recorded as a place name in a list by Thutmose III, 15th century BC, and later as the nomen, the personal name of ancient Egyptian pharaohs, of a Hyksos pharaoh. The hieroglyphs are ambiguous and can be read as Yaqub Har, Yaqub Baal, or Yaqub El. The same name is recorded earlier, still in around 1800 BC, in cuneiform inscriptions spelled Ya A Qub El. The suggestion that the personal name may be shortened from this compound name, which would translate to May El Protect. The name Israel, Canaanite Aramaic, Yisrael, given to Jacob following the episode of his wrestling with the angel, Genesis 32, 22, 32 and 35:10. Well, that would be incorrect if in the original Tav Ashrik Lishana Atika Sapraya, the language of God, the old tongue, it would be El. So it's obviously scripted wrong there. Somebody's scripted it wrong. It's El, E-I-L, not El, because that was a Canaanite god. Go look online, put in El in your search engine, and you'll find a Wikipedia article that shows a golden idol called El, etc. Okay, this name Israel was given to Jacob following the episode of his wrestling with the angel, Genesis 32, 22, 32. He didn't wrestle with God, he wrestled with an angel. And 35:10 is a composition of the root Sarah, or Sarah, to rule, and El, God, meaning altogether. God rules, or more precise, ruled by God. Not too sure now. The given name is already attested in Canaanite documents from Ugarit, 14th to the 12th century BC, Yeshit, and Ibla, Israel, and the name also appears on the Munipta Stele, Isiri, reign 1213 to 1203 BC, referring to a foreign group of people, the Hyksos. And it's got also information here. So a heck of a lot to read, so we're not going to read all of that. And Jacob first appears in the book of Genesis, where he is described as the son of Isaac and Rebekah and the grandson of Abraham. Sarah and Bethuel, Abraham's Aramaic nephew. According to the Bible, he was the second born of Isaac's children, the elder being Jacob's twin brother Esau. Jacob brought Esau's birthright and, with his mother's help, deceived his aging father to bless him instead of Esau. Later in the narrative, following a severe drought in his homeland of Canaan, Jacob and his descendants, with the help of his son Joseph, who had become a confidant of the Pharaoh. Remember, he was put in a pit and then sold to some passing camel Arabs or traders or whatever they were. He was taken into Egypt, in prison and all that sort of stuff. Eventually got out and became this vice regent of the place, or some sort of authority figure. Moved to Egypt, where Jacob died at the age of 147 supposedly. Jacob is said to have had 12 sons by 4 women, his wives, Leah and Rachel, and his concubines, Bilhah and Zilpah, who were in order of their birth. Reuben, the 12 tribes of Israel, and it's also known that he had a daughter, Dinah. What does it say here? Scholars disagree over the western boundary of the tribes of Judah. The text in Joshua 15 mentions the brook of Egypt. Two possible interpretations identify this as either the Wadi El Arish in the northeastern Sinai, or as the Pelusiac branch of the Nile. And Simeon, the area allotted to Simeon, was also given to the tribe of Judah. Okay, and there's more map and more information about that particular area, the Exodus, etc. We can have a look at that. Okay, the faith of the Hebrews can be understood as finding the right way to God. Hebrew history is marked with glorious triumphs and heartbreaking tragedies. The Canaanites, or Hebrews, to the Egyptians known as Hyksos, invaders from foreign lands, or Hebrews, nomads, and by others known as Canaanites or Phoenicians, began a new life in Egypt during the mid-1900s BC, and Abraham of his clan was one of the first who came. They built a new kingdom that lasted for 4 centuries until hubris and greed took over. When they began to conquer the rest of Egypt, they met fierce resistance that lasted for decades. Defeated by Amos around 1549 to 1542 BC, in about 1530 BC, these Canaanites, in the Hebrew Bible called Israelites, had to leave Egypt. 600,000 men plus an equal number of women and their children headed towards Canaan. On this mountain of God, near the Canaanite border, Moses, son, gave his people a new start with the 10 Commandments, a set of basic laws that had its origin in the instructions of Shurupapak, 2600 BC. So it wasn't from the Egyptians, according to this Grand Bible. It was from the instructions of Shurupapak, you can find in the Grand Bible, and the teachings of TaHotep. Okay, some of them were the teachings of TaHotep, 2500 BC, so I take it back. By the extraordinary journeys in Aramaic, the Aramaic speaking Hebrews spread these basic laws over almost all parts of the world. So probably a little bit of that was an influence from that particular Egyptian, right? But you can't really say they stole the whole thing. They plagiarized it all from the Egyptians, right? When it says there, it came from the instructions of Shurupapak in Mesopotamia, right? Mesopotamian king, etc. King of Shurupapak. In the mountain of God, near the Canaanite border, Moses, or Moses' son, gave his people a new start with the 10 Commandments, a set of basic laws that had its origin in the instructions of Shurupapak, 2600 BC, and the teachings of TaHotep, 2500 BC. Probably a language came from there, like TaHotep or Hotep, but we haven't come across that yet. It's probably an Egyptian language that Moses learnt as a kid growing up in that Egyptian court, etc. Right? So, by their extraordinary journeys, the Aramaic-speaking Hebrews spread these basic laws over almost all parts of the world. So, reading that, these people wrote the Tav Asherit, Lishana Atika Sapraya, the sacred scribal language spoken by God to Adam and Eve, and then to the people, the men at the Tower of Babel. They were speaking that. They were Hebrew people speaking this Aramaic. So, this original ancient, very old Aramaic. So that to us makes us realize in comparison with the original ancient TRS of Jacob manuscripts translated into the nearest English equivalent by native-born Aramaic-speaking translator Victor N. Alexander from Mesopotamia, Syria, that these people that ventured with Abraham, they made this passage, were Hebrews. They didn't speak this language, Hebrew, as of yet. They spoke this sacred scribal language of God, this Otam, Tav Asher Lishana Atika Saprea. Probably, right, we would spoke in Chaldean, right? Okay, so yeah, we've got this idea that that's what was really going down. By their extraordinary journeys, the Aramaic-speaking Hebrews spread these basic laws over almost all parts of the world. And shows you the root of the Hyksos, the Canaanites, Hebrews, Israelites, after their expulsion of Exodus from Egypt back to Canaan. So that's after. It's not during Abraham's passage, right? The Israelites in their expulsion or Exodus from Egypt back to Canaan. That's what it's showing, the root of that. The story of the divided water has its origins most likely from the crossing of the Canal of the Pharaohs, which was built in around 1850 BC by Pharaoh Khodi Sensuret III, who ruled from 1878 BC to 1839 BC. The waterway was intended to facilitate trade between Egypt and India, and that's the one that was lockable, right? According to what we'd read before. According to the Hebrew Bible, an unnamed Pharaoh, most likely Amos, ordered the Israelites to leave Egypt, and they journeyed from their starting point at Ramesses, a newer name for the Hyksos capital Avaris, to Sukkot, Exodus 12:37, a place of storehouses and canal locks. Spies were sent to explore Canaan. Upon the report of the Canaanites, the Israelites refused to enter Canaan and thus spent 40 years in the wilderness. One might wonder if the attitude of the Israelites was not the reverse, and so forth. Moses crosses the Sinai with 600,000 men and their entire families on the central routes due to the water availability. To the era of Paran, the Arabah, from which the Jordan flows into the Red Sea. Nearby is the mountain of God, where he gives the tablets with the 10 Commandments to his people. The only mountain that matches all geographical details in the Bible narrative is the Gebel Hashem, El Tarif, near the port of Eilat. Moses' father-in-law was a Midianite who lived in northern Arabia, but also had a little territory west of Eilat, and that mountain might well have been in it. There's some more information here about Joshua the Conqueror. Okay, it looks like cuneiform tablets. There's a script on it. The origin of Moses' covenant. The tablets with the 100 instructions of Shurupapak, around 2600 to 2500 BC. Found in 1963 at Tel Abu, Salabik, 20 kilometers, 12 miles northwest of Nippur, Iraq. The similarities to the 10 Commandments are striking. Thou shouldest not question with the words of thy mother, etc., etc. The maxims or instructions of Ta'ahotep were published to teach people how to avoid conflicts. Like the instructions of Surupapak, the maxims may have influenced the law of Moses and laws of other civilizations and their religions. Bear in mind, Moses came from Egypt, Abraham from Sumer, or Ur of Chaldea. Right? Okay, that's a Priscilla papyrus, dating from the 12th dynasty, Middle Kingdom, Egypt, discovered by the French Orientalist Emile Plessis d'Avenius, and so forth. Nations can be identified by their language. Hyksos, Canaanites, Hebrews, Israelites, Phoenicians, and Carthaginians spoke the same West Semitic languages. All shared the same circle of culture. In 1887, over 380 letters were found in Amarna, Egypt, written in Semitic Akkadian, trade language of the entire Middle East. This letter was written by Pharaoh Akhenaten to Aziru, the Canaanite ruler of Amurru, around 1350 BC. Akhenaten established monotheism in Egypt and in his province Canaan, so he was probably the forefather of monotheism. Because you remember the Jews, etc., had multiple gods. They're supposed to have one god, but they kept on embracing everybody else's gods. So they had a pantheon of gods, pagan gods. The name of the Torah's central protagonist, Abraham, could denote a clan or tribe rather than a person, for Abra has the same linguistic origin as Abhira, Haburu, Ophir, or Hebrew. After the death of King Shogi, Sumer was ravaged by invaders. Many civilizations had come to a halt due to the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in around 1995 BC. Abraham left Sumer for Haran and Anatolia shortly after, then for Egypt. It is possible that Abraham belonged to the Hyksos, who settled at Avaris. Nearby, the Canal of the Pharaohs was built by Pharaoh Senusret II, Sesostris 12th dynasty, in around 1850 BC. The Torah is the principal scripture of all Hebrews. It's a book of instruction, right? It refers to key events in the distant past as well as to the Hebrew laws, both influenced by Mesopotamia and Egypt. So if this is the book of instructions, the Torah is a book of instructions, could it be a spin-off of the instructions of Surah? A follow-on? Something based on that? If the law of Moses, the commandments, were pretty much similar, or originally from the instructions of Surah. Possibility. Okay. It is possible that Abraham belonged to the Hyksos, who settled at Avaris. Nearby, the Canal of the Pharaohs was built by Pharaoh Senusret II, Sesostris 12th dynasty, in around 1850 BC. The Torah is the principal scripture of all Hebrews. It refers to key events in the distant past as well as to the Hebrew laws, both influenced by Mesopotamia and Egypt. The instructions of Surah, Sumer, and that's probably how they went down the line. And you've got the Babylonian Talmud, the Talmud Bavli, Shishat Sedarim, Jewish law, and it's on page 1052.